Space, the final frontier. These are the podcasts of the podcast Enterprise. Its only mission to explore story structures, to analyze our favorite characters and plot lines, to boldly talk about what everyone has seen before. Hello and welcome everyone to podcast Enterprise. Here we dissect Star Trek the original series episodes one by one. Look for story structure, uh, things that we like, things that we didn't like, character arcs, and the whole thing in between. I am Bala Ramudurai, and with me I have my host Parvati Ramkumar. Say hello, Parvati.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We are discussing the immunity syndrome today and giant space amoeba.
Yes, space amoeba indeed. Okay, let's have the summary, Parvati.
So, when this episode begins, you have the USS Enterprise in a state of exhaustion. Everybody on board is extremely tired after their last mission and they're looking forward to some short leave on Starbase 6. Here, on the way though, Uhura picks up some distorted signals and with some sector coordinates. There's also a lot of static with this communication, so she can't make out what they are saying. Eventually, though, she does get through, and this communication is coming from Starbase 6. They want the Enterprise to change course and go to the Gamma 7A system where the Intrepid was last seen investigating. This is a Vulcan ship, and something has happened to the Intrepid, which the Enterprise must now investigate. Kirk is a little reluctant to do it because everybody is so tired while they're in the process of changing course, Spock goes into a state of shock because he has apparently suffered some sort of a psychic attack where he has received mental communication of some kind from the Vulcan ship Intrepid, and it seems that everybody on board the Intrepid has been killed. Spock also says that they were surprised by this death that suddenly hit them. As the Enterprise goes to the Gamma 7A system, they find that there's something completely wrong there. The system is dead. There are no people. There is no life. And they also approach some sort of a dark zone, a dead zone. The stars are blotted out. And it seems like some sort of a gash in deep space. They can't see anything beyond it. They are not able to probe into it, and they're not able to see it except for this large void directly in their path. Spock has trouble trying to figure out what it is exactly, and this irritates Kirk quite a bit. But as they approach this black zone, it seems that everyone is getting more and more tired. The engines are somehow losing power. There's a lot of issues with the forward thrust because engineering has issues and the ship's systems have issues. And then finally, Kirk, after a briefing with McCoy and Spock, decides to send some sort of a probe into this dark zone. And by this time, the Enterprise has also entered the dark zone. So they're losing power, they're losing light, they're losing energy. Everybody is beyond tired and they need to be given boosters. After some investigation, it is found that this dead zone is actually some sort of a shielding for a single celled creature, an amoeba type creature that radiates negative energy and it leeches off the energy of anything that approaches it. It's sometimes also capable of killing off entire solar systems. The Intrepid had approached the creature and got killed in the process. It's not actively killing anything that approaches it, you just die. That's what it does. The radius of this thing is about 11,000 miles, apparently, which is huge. Both McCoy and Spock volunteer to travel into this creature to try and figure out a way to destroy it. However, Spock wins over McCoy, which causes a bit of irritation for McCoy. He takes a shuttlecraft, goes into the thing to study it, and then through his analysis and studies of this amoeba, they find that they can actually blow it up. The episode ends like that because They figure out this way how to blow it up. They use a certain way to blow it up, and there is also some issue with the gravitational pull of this thing because it's drawing the ship forward. They rig an explosion, break free of it, move backwards, grab the shuttlecraft with Spock in it and his heroics and whatever jokes he has with McCoy. They grab Spock in the shuttlecraft, they go back, and this thing is finally killed, and that's how the episode ends. And a bit of it ends on a bit of a light note. I think, Bala, that given the complexity of this episode, the actual plot is a little simple. That
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So here also we have a four-act structure. It starts with a teaser with the Intrepid, the ship full of Vulcans goes missing. That's one thing that it starts off with. Also, the fact that the crew is extremely tired. They are looking forward to relaxation. The last thing they want is to go away on another adventure. The teaser ends with the confirmation that Gamma 7A, the entire solar system, about 4 billion people are dead. So they have to answer the call of duty. So that's how the teaser starts. First act starts with Spock being examined by Dr. McCoy to see if there's something wrong with Spock because he did react a little violent for Spock on the bridge. So he wanted to make sure that he is fine. That's how the first act starts. The first act ends with the entire crew, two-thirds of them personnel affected, and the entire crew showing energy readings indicating that they're all dying. So because they after they've entered the zone of darkness, as it's called, they're all of them are dying because the energy, if they predict the trend of how they're losing out energy, they will end up being dead. That's how the first act ends. The second act starts with them figuring out that the reverse, when they do it on the ship, actually leads to a forward lurch. And this is an important piece of evidence for the crew to know that things work in reverse in this zone and inside wherever they're headed. That's how the second act starts with them taking action to get out of it. By the end of the second act, they figure out that it's not just a zone of darkness, but it is actually an envelope around a living protoplasm. The living protoplasm is 11,000 miles long and 2 to 3,000 miles wide, but still living all the same. It is like a simple living form, but it's huge. Um, that's what they figure out at the end of second act. The start of the third act is with us getting to know about what does a single cell organism look like, and how does that compare to the humans or the humanoids, and that we seem like a virus to this single cell organism. That's the comparison in this third act. Third act has a lot of things happening, just like how Parvati mentioned in her summary. There are so many things happening at pretty much around the
Yeah.
same time. It's a high paced sort of episode. Towards the end, we get to know that probably Spock is going to die, and
Mm.
that the ship itself has very little time to survive or do something. Sort of a cliffhanger situation. What is the fate of Spock? What is the fate of the Enterprise going to be? Are they going to end up just like how the Intrepid ended and supposedly Spock ended also? Fourth act starts with McCoy Kirk exchange where they hope that Spock is still alive, and Kirk gets the idea of how to destroy the creature, the single cell organism. That's how the fourth act starts. And of course, there's a lot of action. And at the end, Spock is saved, the ship is saved, and the creature is destroyed. No points
Yeah.
for guessing how the ending is going to be. But the whole experience, which was amazing, and how it was built up to this point. And Kirk again wishing that they would have a shore leave at the end of all of these struggles. So that was immunity syndrome. And what did you think about immunity syndrome, Parvati?
I thought it was incredibly complex and very, very fascinating. And the idea of having such a large single celled organism in deep space was so scary. And the fact that they couldn't really figure out what it was in the beginning, they just saw the zone of darkness, and even the starlight wouldn't come through. They couldn't see what it was. It was just this inky blackness on their viewing screen. And then as they approach, the zone of darkness kind of dispels, and they see this fish shaped amoeba sort of creature. And then they find out that it's a single celled organism. It's just huge, waiting to reproduce. It is waiting to split, and then it draws energy from anything that comes close to it. And it's actually capable of wiping out 4 billion people just like that. Yes, it is incredibly complex. And I found that the interaction between the characters here was very, very, very interesting, particularly the McCoy Spock exchanges. And Kirk also, he is so tired. He has already been through some very harrowing missions. He needs that shore leave. And while he is already tired, he and the crew are sucked into this zone of darkness where the rest of their energy is being leached. And it also affects the Enterprise, which is a little too much. It's very hard to deal with, and everything seems to be working in reverse. And Scotty has to figure that out, which is also adding to the tension. And yeah, I think it was very, very interesting and definitely a classic episode. What about you, Bala? What are your thoughts?
My initial thoughts was this is science fiction at its best. So the concept of a giant amoeba is incredible. First of all, 11,000 miles. Trying to even
Yes.
imagine that and thinking how detrimental it could be. And we've already seen what it can do. 4 billion people are dead. One of their ships just went missing. So what
Yeah,
this creature can do. And the way it is
exactly.
built up,
Yes.
so it starts at it very mysteriously saying, what is this all about? What's going on? That people are disappearing, people are dying, and what is
Yes.
really causing this? All you have is, like you said, ink blotch. That's about it, right?
Yeah.
So what is this? Why is it doing this? How is it doing this? Are all mysterious, and slowly it's unraveled, saying, and that's the pacing part of it. Initially, we only see problems from the starship point of view, and the fact that, and you start wondering whether is it because already because the crew is tired that this is happening, or is it now it's also happening to the ship? So that's probably not only the crew, and you have all these thoughts, and I thought, like you said, right? So it was riveting, the whole episode.
Yeah.
And you notice how they've built up the tension scene by scene and act by act. They've done it very extremely well. um
Yes.
yeah.
I it was also very that announcement that Spock makes that this thing is living, status living. That was so chilling. He says it in a very deadpan way, but it's not something that you would expect because you'd think it's some kind of nuclear waste or something of that sort. You wouldn't expect it to be an actual single celled creature, living creature out there in deep space.
Hmm.
And what I also found rather interesting is that McCoy demonstrates the movements of an actual amoeba through a microscope, and he says
Hmm.
the little amoeba is more complex than the thing out there, which is also very, very peculiar.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
it's very peculiar. And this creature is not an evil or malevolent creature by itself. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. But as the comparisons go, this was some sort of a virus invading the galaxy, and the Enterprise turned out to be the antibody, so it had to be gotten rid of.
So in fact, the whole idea started off with them trying to figure out. So even in fact, that's why I said this is like a science fiction part of it. So you try to figure out what things are by going very logically.
Yep.
You try to figure. So he tries out every trick in the book. So that didn't work
Mm.
because there's no data.
Yeah,
So
there's no data.
then Kirk employs the reverse logic to see, because he's so tired, he can't do it the regular way. He goes the
Mm.
opposite way and says, okay, tell me what it's not so far. That's maybe that can help us figure out what it is. So they figure out
Yeah,
that this thing sucks energy and
yeah,
is happy doing so. And so
yeah.
they think, okay, it only affects the humans. Then Scotty had to come along and say, what? We lost 5% of our energy reserve. And Kirk goes, Oh
Yeah.
my god, it affects the ship too. And so it
Yeah.
starts getting more interesting as time progresses. That's the neat part of it, right there in the first act.
Yeah. it it kind of absorbs everything, and it even destroyed the Intrepid in a flash. It didn't have
Hmm.
to, it doesn't do anything much, but it manages to destroy just about everything in its vicinity quickly, so that it can store up energy and get about doing what it wants to do, which is probably reproduction. I think it had enough energy stored to split, which
Hmm.
might have caused a huge problem. So it just needs energy and more energy and more energy. And here you have Kirk, who has
Hmm.
been, first of all, he has been denied his space, his shore leave. And then
Hmm.
on top of that, he is, first of all, he is tired. And then he comes in contact close to this creature and he gets even more tired. And how does he even take a logical or a rational decision with that level of exhaustion? And then you have also Spock, who's not giving him any proper data, which is incredibly infuriating for him. It's insufficient data, which is not sufficient. That's not what he wants. He wants to know what this thing is.
Yeah, Kirk desperately wants to know what the heck is this? What is he fighting
Yeah,
against? He really wants to know. But
exactly.
Spock can't help him there, right? It's
Spock
completely gone.
can't help him there. And I think this is one of those instances where Kirk probably wishes that Spock showed some kind of emotion instead of just standing there and deadpanning, there's insufficient data, which could be so infuriating when your lives are on the line. You have no information on what it is you're dealing with, and just saying insufficient data is probably not the best idea on Spock's part.
And we also feel when Kirk tells McCoy that we better start solving problems faster than
Yep,
problems appear, right? So they're appearing very, very
exactly.
rapidly. The crew is sick, people are tired, the ship is in trouble. So many
Yep.
problems cropping up, and then McCoy says, "Oh, what this is happening? Oh, that is happening." Better start solving them.
Yes, we better start solving them. And we are also in this strange zone where there's no starlight, there's no light, they're in utter darkness, they can't move. Attempting to go backwards actually propels them to go forward, and they
Hmm.
have to use reverse logic and come up with some way to break free of this thing's pull. It's a very, I'm not even sure, it's something like a contrarian situation that they're in, and it takes more energy than Kirk's got at the moment to come up with something. And one thing he cannot do at this point is keep his temper. He keeps losing it.
Yes. Yeah. So they realize that this zone of darkness
Yeah,
is not the ultimate thing, because that's what Spock also points out, that
exactly.
probably there's more to it than just the zone of darkness.
Darkness, yes.
So that he figures that discussion room was pretty enlightening in many ways. One is
Mm,
that they are desperate, however, they still will apply, see what are the possible alternatives, what can they do, and then
yeah,
they take a decision right there, saying, okay, we're going to put a massive lurch forward with all the available power, and then see where that
yeah.
takes us.
Exactly. And that's when they find, and it almost ended in complete disaster because
Mm,
attempting to, that's when they discover that the engines, first of all, there's a lot of strain on the engines, and then attempting
mm,
to go backwards actually pulls them forward. So he has to think quickly before, because now they're approaching the creature with much greater speeds than they did before. So they have to figure out something to pull away from it before it devours all of them. And this
mm,
is, and I think at this point, only Kirk could have come up with this idea that let's try and use reverse logic. Let's see what it is not. And then by process of elimination, not that there's enough time to take that for, not that there's not enough time to think about it much, but if by the process of elimination, if you attempt to go forward and this thing pulls you backward or vice versa, then they have to do the opposite, which it
yeah, yeah.
it was, yeah, it was quite a tense moment when they're here thinking that they have to do this and this and this, and then you have also Spock, who is ever the scientist, and he wants to go down there and kind of examine it and take samples when everybody's here losing their minds. He's just so calm, and we'll study it, that's it. No wonder McCoy is utterly furious with him.
Yeah, this verse is applied everywhere. One is
Yeah,
amoeba is supposed to be microscopic. In this case, it's 11,000 miles long. Okay. Now,
exactly.
creatures are supposed to take in positive energy, they're taking negative energy here. Anything
Exactly.
that moving forward should move you forward, but it takes you reverse. And logic also, right? So he uses reverse logic. So I think that that's a common theme all across. So even in explosion, they're giving them antimatter. So there's a bottle full of
Yes,
antimatter, and they're going and planting it there, and then coming out. So and it's such a massive body. It has to be non-living. I mean, most creatures, the largest creature that we know is what? I don't know. If you take
the blue
historic,
whale.
it's the blue whale. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
largest we have, and we can see it. Nothing that big can be called living. So that's another reversal of many of our assumptions. So I think the entire
yeah.
episode, the idea of reversing known assumptions or things that we assume are completely turned on its head. That's the common theme across this episode.
Yes, and this one single cell creature is so terrifyingly large that it's able to kill an entire solar system, which is also unthinkable. You would think that,
Mm. Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
unlike many of these single celled little creatures that we're used to, microscopic creatures that we are used to, this amoeba, there's just one of it waiting to
Mm.
split, of course, but there's only
Mm.
one, and that one can do so much damage that the tension just keeps growing and growing and growing and it doesn't really do anything violent. It's just sitting there destroying everything that goes close to it. It doesn't actively seek out prey, and obviously it's a single celled organism, so there must be limitations to what it can or cannot do. But
Mm.
yeah, it was pretty frightening to watch it sit there and pulse in its various colors with that single nucleus, and then the crew here is losing all their life. They're losing their lives, they're losing their energy, the ship is shutting down, and everything is in reverse. And like
Mm.
you said, this whole episode thrives on reversals.
Correct. Also, interestingly, that when they were, what are they going to say? Oh boy, I was going to say something clever. I forgot now. um, Now, the single cell
Yeah,
with usually assume that or another assumption that we have is something that even if it's single cell and can attack so many people, has to
yeah,
multiply and become numerous. But this is just one of them. So
this
that's
is just
another. Yeah,
one.
like you said, many things that we have assumed have been completely reversed. So uh,
Completely
it's-
reversed.
yeah.
It was also interesting that even though they were all reversed, this amoeba was in the process of splitting or reproducing. So eventually, I think it might have filled the galaxy with little. It's many of these. Its children probably, but when you are introduced to it for the first time, it's just one. And yeah, that's a complete. It flies in the face of everything you're used to, or everything that you don't encounter one microbe in one. In those you encounter many of them. This is not a microbe, but still, it's kind of strange to just see one of it. So
Mm.
yeah, even though it is in
No,
the process of
yeah, now I
reproduction.
remember
Yeah,
what I was going to say. So the
yeah,
another element that is used very effectively in this episode
yeah,
is and why it's so tense is the element of time. That there's only 2 hours is all you got
yes,
to get rid of this creature, and then it becomes one
it's
hour 35 minutes, and then so you can see
it's
that
coming
this is
down. Yeah,
right. So as it is, there are many problems to solve, and things are not really going well for the Enterprise or the crew. However,
yeah.
on top of that, we have this ship which cannot last more than 2 hours. You have to
Yes.
solve this problem within that time. So this is all they got.
Yeah.
So very effectively used because you feel the tension. It's and when Scott at the end says, "Oh, we're down to zero because of your
Ah,
tractor beam. We have nothing now left." He says, "Oh, you might as well have written the epitaph for for us all." So
yes, for us
that's
all. So it's we are reaching the end, and and I also
this
think, yeah, I was also thinking that of all the alien creatures that we have encountered in Star Trek so far, this is probably the first one you can't negotiate or bargain with,
is.
and uh, our Captain Kirk, I don't think he can outwit it in that sense through by talking. You can't tell it anything; it's not going to listen or understand you anyway. So I think this is the first time we're encountering an alien creature capable of destroying everything, but there's no reasoning with it. It's just there. It doesn't. It's
Hmm.
not intelligent as we understand it. It's not like you know insulting a Klingon or talking to any of those Metrons or any of the other alien races, even though this thing is alien.
Well, in one sense, the Doomsday Machine is very similar to this amoeba. It's
Yes, but that
yeah, here is a machine. Here's
yeah,
a creature, correct. But
it
in
is a
terms
creature.
of
Yeah,
what it could do and
yeah,
what these guys couldn't do was that
yeah.
talk reason to this creature slash machine. So
Exactly. You
in
can't
in
talk
one
to
way
it.
it's a parallel to that, but where it differed big time was the fact that this was sucking up their own life forces, life energy, as
Yeah,
well as the machine's energy levels as well. So it's even more
exactly.
dangerous than the doomsday machine. Just pretty much focused on one thing: keep flowing through wherever it goes, refuel itself,
Yeah,
and keep moving on. But this one's not
and
like
the
that. It has different agenda set.
yeah, and the Doomsday Machine also has some measure of intelligence because it is able to detect ships that
Hmm.
come within its field of view and then
Oh
chase
yeah.
them down and fire.
Oh yeah.
This
Right.
thing doesn't do any of that, but it's able to destroy far more than the Doomsday Machine can ever dream of doing. It is able to wreak havoc in ways that the Doomsday Machine couldn't even imagine in its
Hmm.
ever since it was created. So this single-celled, seemingly dormant space amoeba is a terrifying creature. It's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, and I like this idea of, yes, it is sacrificial, but it I like the idea of somebody, the top
Yeah.
team trying to go and investigate it for themselves by
Yes.
manning a shuttlecraft and going in there with a probe and doing this by themselves, because it is hard to figure out a large creature like this to by
Mm.
themselves from using just the probes from the Enterprise. So it was a
Yeah.
good move. However, it was one-way ticket. That was it. So
Yeah.
it's lucky that Spock made it back alive, but it is sheer luck, dumb luck that he made it. Otherwise, I don't think
Yes.
uh, this was meant as a mission where they could come back.
Yes, and he was pretty sure that he wouldn't be able to come back, and he also set the shuttlecraft's life support systems it to the minimum, so
Hmm.
that he has enough energy to gather data and kind of keep the shuttlecraft running for as long as is needed, despite the
Hmm.
energy drain. And
Yes.
at those points, yeah, you can feel McCoy's tension because he
Hmm.
is furious with Spock and annoyed with him, and at the same time he's concerned. And when
Right.
they actually attempt to rescue Spock, here's Spock making excuses about how the mission has to go on and etc etc etc, and then McCoy has it and says, shut up Spock, we're rescuing you. It's
Yeah.
exactly what we would all like to vocalize at that point.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. No, I like that the whole exchange between McCoy and Spock right before Spock boards the shuttlecraft. He says,
Yeah,
initially Spock gloats that it's his superior abilities, and the lack of the professional degree didn't matter,
yeah,
professional credentials didn't matter. However, he knows that it's just razor thin margin in which Kirk had to take a decision and spend Spock, because he couldn't
yeah.
lose both of them. He had to pick. If he had to pick, it is Spock because of his Vulcan physique that probably could have taken the stress.
And also, I think Spock's absolute lack of emotion might have helped a little bit.
Oh
McCoy is
yeah,
very
that too.
fiery.
Yes. Yeah.
He's extremely passionate. Even when Kirk, when he started talking about sending someone to the organism to study it, McCoy
Hmm.
started looking very smug because he thought he was the man for the job. And here
Right.
you have, yeah, Spock actually had kept his head throughout the episode. He kept his cool, and despite all of those taunts and McCoy's outbursts, he still managed to stay calm and cool. Maybe that was what was required for this mission.
I think Spock is right there, where when he confronts McCoy and says, "You have a martyr complex." I agree because
Oh
l-
yes, yeah,
looks like this is one. The idea could have come from McCoy because looks like they're dying. The indicators all suggest that they're going to die, and
yeah,
and McCoy thought that this is a great opportunity for him to use this as a way to go nearer the creature, and for sure he's going to die. Might as well do it
yeah,
in the at the cost for the scientific cause, right? So
yeah.
that's clearly martyr complex talking about it more than surviving and try to get back. Even though
Exactly.
the
He,
chances are slim, the odds are very poor.
yeah.
Still, I think you're right that by saying that McCoy probably wouldn't have made it either ways.
Yes, I do think he was a little too passionate, a little too short-tempered, a little too hot-headed for this kind of a mission. Even if he had been willing, and even if he had had the technical know-how, I doubt that he would have been as coldly efficient as Spock was. And
Mm.
even after almost getting killed and after he survives this huge blast that kills the creature, he comes back on board the Enterprise and says, I have some information on the organism. And he's still, he's always the scientist. He's, after everything that happens, he comes back and that's all he has to say. I have more information on this creature. It never even strikes him that the others might be exhausted. Nope. We must talk about this creature and study it.
Yeah, they're feeling good that hey, Spock made it alive, and he's like has to say, "Ah, you know what? I have information. I want to write a paper on it, present it to a conference and all that." Dude, you just survived such a miraculous escape. We could have died
Yeah,
too trying to rescue you. No, it doesn't. Okay, it's okay. I want to do this thing, scientific
yeah.
thing.
I have this. I have all of this information. I need all of this analyzed like right now.
Yeah, that's
It
that's
doesn't
a
matter
bad.
that yeah. It doesn't matter that everybody was going to die. Those are all events in the past. We need to present this now.
Yeah. So,
So
uh,
it's
uh,
it, that captures him very well. I feel that is quintessentially Spock. That is who he is. It's no. There's no reasoning with him.
yeah, and in a nice way, the third act ended by saying, by giving out just a little bit of evidence or a clue to Kirk, saying that this could be destroyed, giving him some hope, but not knowing what it
Yeah.
was. By that was cleverly done, I thought. So Kirk had to
Yes.
figure it out, saying what is to be done to destroy this creature. So at the end, he figures it out in his conversation with McCoy. That was a great setup and payoff. Very nicely done.
Yes, the information is it's so close. He's so close to getting that one piece of information that could destroy the creature, and the transmission cuts off. And yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's you almost feel that the creature did it on purpose because it knew it was listening into Spock, and it decided that nobody's going to destroy me, so I'm going to cut off all communication. It almost feels like that. It was so frustrating. And
Mm,
Kirk, again, yeah, he has to use his ingenuity to try and figure out the right way to kill
mm,
this thing without killing any of his crew and while keeping Spock alive. It was quite
mm.
a gamble.
Right. Yeah, and again, I'm going to draw a parallel between Doomsday Mission and this. There is a in
Yeah,
that there is a what 30-second delay or something, and here you have a 7-minute
there
fuse
was.
delay. So something
Yes,
similar.
yes.
Yeah,
There was
that
a
was a
30
parallel.
second delay and the transporter didn't work. And here again, you're cutting it too fine. You're going very
Yes.
close to death here. But they make
Yeah.
it out. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also found the recording he made, the captain's log that he made, which he thought
Oh
might be
yes.
his final
Right.
recording. And he says he bequeaths his highest communication and testimonial to the officers and the crew of the Enterprise, and it's the finest starship in the fleet. It was pretty moving.
Yes, it was very nice. Yeah. Both Spock and Kirk
Yes,
leave
this was
their
actually said by
commendation
Spock.
and
Yeah, it
uh,
was. There was one that Spock made, which was
uh
very moving, and that was
yes.
the one that he has this commendation and testimonial to the captain and officers and the crew of the Enterprise. And he also says it's the finest ship in the fleet, which shows emotion. And then you
Yes.
have Kirk doing the same thing. He's recording his commendations and recommendations, and he names them and says
Right.
Uhura and Chekhov and McCoy. It was very moving because it seemed like they were preparing, bracing for death.
Yep.
And should these records survive, this is what happened. It was a very touching moment in that, and a little
Yes. Yes.
terrifying for the viewer because you start thinking, are they all going to die?
Yeah. 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 It's just that could have been one of the possibilities. So
Yes,
it was a gamble. Yeah. So definitely. So I think that was very well expressed that and that was necessary at that point to
yeah,
communicate to us that death was a possibility in that a very
that was a possibility.
yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't matter that this was just not just, but it was a single celled creature. But sometimes you have to prepare for the end, and I think that's what they did here. And it was really it was pretty dark at that point because
Mm,
both literally and figuratively, because they are in the zone of darkness, first of all, and then they are preparing for their own deaths. And you
mm,
don't know at that point when he had made this recording, when Captain Kirk had made this log, you don't even know whether Spock is alive. And it's only at the end that you realize that the Enterprise survived
mm.
and Spock has been pulled back into the shuttlecraft has been pulled back into a safe zone. So it was very well done, and there was so much tension at that point towards the end.
Hmm. Yeah. And Chekhov had to find Spock's craft at that moment. He could have easily
Yep.
ignored it. They're trying to run away and run for life. And
Yeah.
that's exactly when Chekhov finds that there is Spock's craft somewhere nestled inside the nucleus of that creature.
Yeah.
And immediately they recognize that it's Spock and they try to take
Bring
out
him
the
back and
bring him
yeah.
back, use the tractor beams at some energy cost to the Enterprise. Scotty is not in favor of it because that would jeopardize their own survival also. However,
Yes.
Kirk had nothing to do. He said,
Yeah.
"We will
And
do. If we go, we all go together, or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we all make it
Exactly.
out together."
Exactly. And I think we've learned by now that all of Kirk's gambles are good gambles. They work. And so no matter how outlandish it seems and no matter how crazy it seems, he survives. And his decisions are usually good, as we saw here. Everybody
Yeah.
survived.
Yes, yes, they did. Yes, and of course that moment when the stars are back, they are very happy to
Oh,
see the stars
yes.
again.
The
All the
stars are back.
darkness and literally are going through dark situation. They are back into oh, I can see the stars
They're
again.
back, and there's no sign of this, and there's no sign of the space amoeba. It's been completely obliterated. So everybody's safe.
Yeah, yep, yep, yep. And final line being no, no, actually the penultimate line being you botched the what is it acetylcholine test, something like that. He says McCoy.
Don't be so smart, Spock. You botched the acetylcholine or something test. Yeah, I
I
mean,
tried to check what that
I don't
is.
blame it. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
I
it's
acetylcholine. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, I think it's one of those things in the nervous system or something like that. I that's what I did kind of a
Is
study in
it?
that. I don't know why I didn't quite get what that meant. When I did my
Yeah,
search,
I
I
mean,
found that it's some chemical in your brain. Why is that connected to this? I'm not pretty sure.
so I guess, well, I don't know, but it does seem like McCoy just wanted to put him in his place. You say, Spock, you're alive. And all this guy has to say is, obviously, Captain. And he has information on the creature. How infuriating is that? He has to be put in his place, taken down a peg or two. And I think,
Okay.
yes,
So
so
I found out that the acetylcholine receptor is test is an antibody test. So to figure out something
ah,
about the antibody. So since they are
okay.
antibodies for the universe, it says you botched the antibody test and somehow you made it. So be happy with that. Don't try to be very smart apart from that.
Yeah,
So you just
and
made
when people are happy to see you, all you have to say is, obviously, I'm alive and I want to discuss this creature and I have information.
it.
There's no reason.
Right.
There's absolutely no reasoning with him.
All right. So we reached
Yeah.
the likes and dislikes section. So what did you like
Yeah.
and dislike about this episode, Parvati?
Oh, I really enjoyed this so much, and it's such a classic episode, and there's so much tension and so much adventure. Adventure in that adventure that is tied into the tension that keeps you on the edge of your seat. There's so much happening in this episode that I find it hard to pick out just one thing that I liked. But I will say that the idea of having this 11,000-mile wide single celled organism that can destroy entire solar systems and kill billions of people is incredibly interesting. And that's the thing that I liked the most. And the next thing that I liked was all the human interactions that we saw aboard the Enterprise. Well, everybody is trying to keep each other going. And despite being so exhausted, and the McCoy Spock banter is probably one of the best we have in Star Trek, and this episode did that so well. And it's
Hmm.
also in so it was also very fascinating to watch the crew go about their duties
Hmm.
and try to keep the ship running despite being so tired and despite being terrified of this amoeba that's right there in front of them. And those are the things I really found, that I found these things stood out while I watched this episode. And as for dislikes, what did I dislike? I'm not sure I disliked anything. I enjoyed it way too much to have any dislikes. What about you, Bala?
I think it's a fantastic episode. One of my favorites. It stands up
Yeah.
there with the rest of my favorites, like Devil in the
Yeah.
Dark, Balance of Terror, Doomsday
Yes.
Machine, all those. It stands up there.
Mm.
The trio
Yeah.
brainstorming and trying to come up with a solution. I always love that Kirk, McCoy, and Spock
Yeah.
together trying to figure out what this is. Operation Annihilate also had that. It was really nice. This one
Mm.
also has that, and like you mentioned already, you mentioned it, Spock McCoy moments,
Yeah.
banter and different. So you start seeing layers of their relationship also in this, their friendship. You can see how each one likes the other, and but not willing to admit that they like each other. I think there are
Yes.
a few more episodes where we'll see that. This
Yeah.
one is definitely one we see. Scotty definitely was something that he did also. A couple of dialogues that I enjoyed Scotty's delivery was what the devil, and pardon me sir for saying this, but are we doing here?
Yeah.
Is that, and the second one is I it couldn't swallow that. So those are two things that I really like Scotty. And Scotty, again,
Yes.
like you said, right, the uh,
Yeah.
ship being maintained is exemplified through Scotty's actions. In spite of all of things that are going on, they need power to
Yeah.
do anything in the ship, and this guy is responsible for that, and he
Yes.
does it the best. He's the best in that.
He's the
Yeah.
absolute best. Yes.
In a previous episode, Kirk compliments Scotty by saying that more about the ship than the guys who designed it. So it's
Yeah.
that he's that good. Scott is that good.
He's that
Uh,
good. Yes.
and what also I liked about this episode was that this is a massive problem to solve. It's not a simple thing to just solve it just like that. And
Mm.
on top of that, the stakes keep increasing. It is just a tiredness issue to start with. Then you have an energy drain. They're almost
Mm.
dying. The energies of the ship is gone out. The engines are gone out, and now there is no way getting out. Even if they wanted to, they can't get out. Now, how do they come out of it? Now they've sent
Yeah.
their best officer out there, so it's a lot of stakes and keeps increasing. There's the time pressure, very well built up scenes and sequences, very nicely done. So
Yes. Yes.
some words that I just randomly wrote about my likes and dislikes was energy, health, sacrifice, science, loyalty, and humor. These are some things that came
Ah,
to my mind when I saw them.
absolutely. All of these came together very well.
Very well. Dislikes, if I can, this is definitely nitpicking, but one thing that I saw is this Kirk, quote unquote, looking at this woman and saying, "Oh, I would like to have a lovely planet to look at," sort of looked very cheesy to me. Uh, that he does it at the beginning. Also, he looks at a woman when he says this, and same.
Yeah.
There's a I don't know, the science officer who's going there, and he's looking at her and saying that, oh, I'd like to go on a lovely planet, go to a lovely planet. So sort of. No, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
sort of cheesy. It was taken in a light way, but I thought it was like
yeah,
bordering on being
unnecessary.
cheesy. Yeah, unnecessary. You could say
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
So that is the only
True.
thing that was a bit off for me, but
Yeah.
it's okay. Okay. Come down to the hypothetical question. If the screenwriter were to appear in our podcast, what would you ask them
I
or
I would ask
explain?
him to. Well, I would just ask him to keep this episode as is. Maybe remove that reference that you just made to him checking out the woman and making some comments. But other than that, just keep it as is. Please don't change
Yes.
anything. Don't even think of changing anything. It's forbidden.
Yeah.
What about you, Bala?
I would just say hats off to you,
Yeah.
and please write a manual on how to write good science fiction episodes.
Yeah,
That'll be
absolutely.
really
We could use
useful
some
for
tips.
all of us. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have
we
generally
could use some
definitely
tips.
learned quite a bit from this, but still
Yeah.
a good manual how to write a good science fiction episode. That will really help us.
Yes, that would help us. And like I said, please don't ever think of tampering or changing this because it's not allowed.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Parvati, and
Thank you.
we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you and bye.
Bye, everyone.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening to the podcast Enterprise. Please do share your reviews with us and please share this podcast with any of your writing friends or trickies. Live long and prosper.